we use the uninflected Sanskrit. Uninflected means using symbols that try to be as close as possible as the original Sanskrit sound. But then in Sanskrit there's the accent. Okay, there's 13 major accents just in India about Sanskrit, because the Telugu, the Tamil, the Pali, the Hindi, and every other of the 13 main languages of the 200 dialects they have in India have a different accent. So to understand, is it dramatic if you chant it exactly like Maha does, or like a Hindu would tell you, and whoever comes from wherever, the consonants are the consonants. The D is a D, D, okay? Except in Danish, the D is an L, okay? From an American or Canadian point of view. That was a nice joke, okay? So the K is a K, the T is a T. The consonants are supposed to be the major keys, and then the vowels will vary depending on the accent, okay? And when I said my name, MahaVajra, to someone of the north, he understood immediately. And when I said to someone of the south, he said, no, it's incorrect. It's MahaVajra. Seriously, MahaVajra. That's my name. Yeah. MahaVajra. So, alright, so what if I'm in the middle? It's like MahaVajra. It's a bit between both. And eventually, as I discovered that everyone was right according to which part of the world they come from, and say it, okay? So it's not that dramatic. The entire part of you need to say Sanskrit exactly like that, because the Hindu are extremely strict on how you should say it. But just the word Vasudev becomes Basudeva, depending on which area. And they're super strict on how you have to say Sanskrit purely, but even in their own country, they change dramatically the sound of it, depending on where they come from. Okay, so that opinion from Brahmanically trained Hindu people is not valid. Their prayers are, their wisdom is, but the opinion about how the vowels should sound is not that dramatic. You do your best to do something that will bring you an experience. Okay, is that good enough? So you don't have to worry too much about the proper pronunciation in terms of the accent, but in terms of saying the words as best you can. Okay. The English literal means this is literal interpretation. Literal translation. There's no interpretation. There's no understanding. There's no wisdom in there. It's just almost word for word. Equality for all through the meeting of the three ways reached with virtue. That's going to take a while to just understand that phrase. Okay. There's one about the white silk also. What does white silk have to do with personal growth? Then asanga means unattached. It doesn't really mean unattached. It means the absence of community. Or actually there is a community, but it doesn't really exist. We go into non-distinction perception of interaction with the whole. But right now it just says unattached. That translation, I asked my translators to put the English literal, because without a class, it's pretty much impossible to really understand a prayer without understanding the fundamental concepts that are invoked. Okay? So we charge it, we chant it, it works. With an explanation, it becomes very powerful. Okay? But without explanation, it still works. Like everyone who teach mantras, and without having the initiation, the mantra still works, but much less. With initiation, it works better, and with the understanding of the Sanskrit, it works even more. Okay? So that's on the presentation of these three kilns. The traditional chant is the vowels as they are more or less said from English people that took the Chinese translation that were already a distortion of the Sanskrit original. Then the Sanskrit original depends on which copy you took from where. Okay, because over thousands of years, it was by voice that was recopied. It was not written the moment that Samantabhadra explained it to Sakyamuni. Okay, the moment of transmission, it was not immediately taken a note or was taken note by the guy Ananda who heard it. So maybe he didn't write exactly the words. It was on the spot. You know, it's just some, like when you take decision at a restaurant on the corner of a table. You know, so it was just thrown right there. There was a class, but it was not that an official class as people would think. Okay, so we found various versions. So we recomposed, and after analyzing 3 versions, having translators work with me, we ended up with that, and that's the official MahaVajra Dandapati. It doesn't mean we're right. It means that it works for us, I think. Okay? We'll see by experience, I guess. We'll discover. Right? If you ever meet someone who practices in the Buddhist canon a different version of the Dandapati, they might be right too, according to their tradition. Okay? So it's nothing about who's right or wrong. The first word, danda, without punishment. Danda means without a stick, actually. Dande means without using it. So in Chinese we chant dande, but in inflected Sanskrit that's before we conjugate the verbs and the possibilities. The word stick in Sanskrit is an object, it's a verb, it's a complement, it's a property, a qualification, an adjective. It depends on the context. It's a bit like the word smurf for Smurfs. We can just adapt it to everything, and a good Bronx American would say the multiple uses of the word fuck. It can be an object, a verb, a thing. What the fuck? Fuck that. Oh, I want to fuck it means you desire it. Fuck it means you don't. So, the word adapts to whatever context, okay? So, danda is, the uninflected Sanskrit here is also unconjugated. So that's what we're going to sing is dande. Okay? Even though it's just to understand from which Sanskrit word it comes. It comes from the word stick as a verb. Now, you've been introduced to the idea of non-action. Okay? Karma, which is causality. Akarma, which is non-causality, where there is causality or there's none, but there seems to be. Kar is action. Akar is non-action. You've been introduced to this. So, danda means there seems to be a stick, but there is none. If we conjugate danda as a verb, it becomes dande. Dande means there seems to be use of a stick, but there is no use of a stick. Okay? What the hell does that mean? It means when you state something, don't blame. Okay? That's the teaching of this morning's teaching about prediction is adande. Okay? When you state a fact, I feel aggressed. Do not turn it into you aggressed me. You responsibilize yourself. There seems to be a blame, but there is no blame. You're just stating a fact, I am aggressed. But you're not blaming anyone. It's just, it would be interpreted by people who are not educated in non-blame. Okay, breathe. Now we're going to waste another hour on the first word of that teaching? Yeah, of course, because it starts there. As we go, it seems to be more complex, but it becomes more fluid, okay? Because at the same time, I'm explaining to you where does a dharani come from. It comes from concepts built together. Then you conjugate them. But there were not necessarily words that were meant to be like in a conversation, you'll never use any of those words in that way. It's not a conversation. It's not a clear decree. It's not a poem. It's a mix of concepts. So you have to just take, what does it feel? Take the feeling of that. So what is, there is no use of a stick. Forget about the stick. Let's do a difference between stick as a verb or stick as an object. Think about a stick as an object. Okay? It's in your right hand. You hold it, you can imagine a stick. Okay, now let's go to the feeling. How does it feel to have a stick as an object? Okay, that's a feeling. Now, it's about there's support. It's not about hitting someone, it's support. There's authority, you gotta get different feelings, okay? Get it? Feeling, the stick as a feeling, right? Now, let go of the stick as an object. What if stick was a verb? Well, in English, I just missed it because you could stick something as a verb. So forget that. Let's use bâton. What is stick in Danish?
Stamp.
Okay, is this a verb, stamp? No? Then use that. Okay?
Yes.
Can-
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we don't want to think about sticking something into someone else because that's just doing a word game with the teaching I'm trying to give. The object itself becomes a verb, therefore it loses substance. It's not a tangible object anymore. It becomes a verb. It's not the verb to stick something. It's the verb stick as an object, but as a verb. Okay? So what's the feeling of a stick as a verb? Immediately you have the feeling of wanting to use it on something. If you remember your feeling of the stick as an object, it was not about hitting, unless you have a mind of hitting people. There's the idea of support, of strength, of defending, maybe hitting, okay. You have all of these feelings you could project on the stick object. What if it's verb? Then you don't have a stick in your hand. So how can you possibly aggress someone if you don't have a stick to aggress them with? You don't have a stick in your hand. There's an event that we call stick, but no object to stick it in or to use. It's a very hard feeling to get, okay? But this is Zen training, that's for the mind. The stick of support becomes the action of support. The stick of defending or barricading yourself or threatening becomes the action, okay? Which either projection or support or defense or attack, okay? Feel it. There can be aggressivity in there, it's okay. Everything you could feel about a baton, a pole, almost a javelin if you put a point, okay? You see that there's a possible aggressivity in there. But there's also a power. If you just hold it and you have support, it helps you walk, okay? Now, the next step of that practice is adande. It is the absence of the verb of that stick. There is no aggression. There is no support. No one will help you. You're not cared by others. But you don't blame anyone. You don't defend yourself. Okay? So we identified what is stick as an object, or a pole, or a staff. You know, staff would be a good way to name it in English because staff is not a verb in English, so the word game stick ends. So a staff, yeah, okay, I found it, I'm happy. So the object staff is something, then the verb staff becomes feelings. And then you say, not any of this. No support, no barricade, no aggression, no defense. So you feel, what is the feeling? Can you feel the absence of everything a staff would be as a verb? Vulnerable. Alone. Which will become autonomous. Which will become responsible later on. But there's no support. There's nothing to defend against. There's no aggression of you. There's no projection. So everything that the staff could bring you as feelings through its use, and then not adding a staff but the attitude of staff as a verb, all this you declare, I end it. I free myself from that. Breathe. So you understand the shock it gives when the first step of personal growth is let go of any idea of using tools to accomplish anything. And you're just alone with yourself. So that's the big cornerstone of Adande. Then the word Adande becomes a siddhi. So we'll practice 5 minutes. Adande. And you contemplate. I know it's complex because it takes 3 stages. Okay? Staff as an object. Then there is no object. Staff becomes a verb. So you have to use your fantasy because staff should be an object. Staff as a verb. And then the absence of that. Vulnerable. No defense. No support. No accompany. No aggression. No blame. Alone. So it's to be just there as yourself. Adande is a practice of simplicity. It's a practice of simplicity. When you first want to do something and your mind gets so carried away with everything you should do about your personal growth and whose fault it is and what you defend yourself against, just drop out of all of that. You're just there. You have no role to play. There is no stick. There is no event. Simple, vulnerable, Adande. 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 Reach this place of powerlessness, of vulnerability. It's not to declare yourself as weak. You're not weak. It is to stop declaring yourself as strong. It's not to declare yourself weak. It's the end of any kind of declaration. You just stop believing you're strong. Stop believing you have support. Stop believing that you have power. But don't confuse it to believe you're powerless or to believe that you're weak. No, there's not that. It's just the end of affirming yourself, the end of your pride, the end of your importance. It doesn't mean that you're not important. It just doesn't matter anymore. Adande. So there is a point of vulnerability. Adande. Do you feel that from this attitude, personal growth is going to be much easier? It brings humility. It is the end of fighting. It brings a feeling that you will take things as they are. You'll accept yourself or events or life as it is. because you're in a state of that simplicity. Now take a deep breath. And come back here. And now you're affected by this simple weakness, which is not a weakness. It feels weak because you always try to pretend that you're so strong. And you end the pretension of strength. So your ego has an impression of weakness for a moment. It's not weakness, it's vulnerable. It's very different. Vulnerable is not to be weak. Vulnerable is to be extremely powerful. Because when you are affected, you can affect. Vulnerability is to become supernaturally powerful. Okay? It doesn't mean to be weak. It means you don't need to defend yourself. Now, don't confuse the Dharma. If you need to save your life, please defend yourself or do what is possible to stay healthy and alive. Okay? Prudence is a virtue. Okay? We proclaim fate as to accept what happens now, but we invoke fate to justify our carelessness. Don't do that. Have prudence. Then we are prudent to plan ahead and make sure everything goes fine. But we use prudence to justify our insecurity. Come on, have a bit of faith. Alright. You understand the faith-prudence dynamic? Okay, you'll justify, if you don't have both, you'll justify one, you'll justify the vicious aspect of the other. Absolutely. Okay. You get that? I won't linger on this one. Adande is a nice introduction to that spell. It's a realization of real personal growth. Personal growth can't happen while you have the verb staff inside you very active. So now you can understand the verb staff, the verb bâton, the verb stick, the verb pole, or the verb pillar. That verb, instead of object, we say a verb, which confuses the linguistic mind, of course, but in feelings it makes sense. That is not personal growth. There is a use for the verb stick, staff, pillar. There's a use at one point, okay, which is very good. Now we want to be free of that. It doesn't mean that we have to reject feeling support or being powerful. It doesn't mean we have to reject it. It means that in a feeling of power, we do not cultivate humility. Until humility is your power. Okay? So it's just to avoid the ego faking humility or faking power when actually it's just aggressive. There's a big difference between aggressivity and power. There's a big difference between violence and power. Power builds and destroys. Power heals and brings pain, sickness, or wounds. Power is a primordial state of being. It's an essence of all things, in all things. But in itself, there is no violence in power. However, if you experience violence in your life, you will feel bad when there is an expression of power, because you're afraid it could become violent. Okay? So you're afraid of power because you're afraid of violence, and it confuses you. Okay, I gave a big class on this a few weeks ago in the first Kujian. Your confusion of power and violence prevents you from discovering the humble, simple power that you have when you are vulnerable. Because when you have a wonderful time listening to music you love, there's power. You feel moved. Wow, this music is powerful. You watch a movie, it made you feel emotions, it was a powerful movie. And there is artistic beauty in there. Sometimes there's construction going on. There is power in those who built this temple, this great hall that we're in. There is power in there. But you can't see the beauty of power while you remain afflicted by the violence. So you confuse power and violence. When there is an expression of power, fear of violence rises. To close your eyes. Okay. So in Adande, this defensive reaction you have against power It ceases. You don't defend yourself. You could become affected. Well, that's personal growth. It starts there, okay? And it also brings the humility to know if you suffer, you're the one suffering. It's not about someone else's fault. It's your suffering. If you can do something about it, please do something about it. Then it's not about projection or blaming someone. It's about responsibility. If someone is involved in an interaction that brings you suffering, don't blame that person, but still find a way to emancipate yourself without causing suffering to the other, making sure you don't have to suffer their actions, but that's just responsible and justice. That's justice. Good communication and to be just and equal. Everyone has the right to do their own freedom. Okay? Don't go into the blame. Go into the responsible communication. It's very different. Okay? Blame means I suffer because of you. No, I suffer, and I know that if you change your behavior, I would stop suffering. Then, I mean, if you don't change your behavior, I'll just go elsewhere. Find a way, you know. Then we have our past karmas, the choices we already made. If you decided to have kids with someone, you have kids. You have a responsibility. Okay? You can't blame the other. You have to remember, I made the choice to have kids with that person that I can't stand anymore. I made that choice. It's too late. Okay, karma. Okay, still love your kids, right? So yeah, bummer. Sometimes we have karma for our past choices. It happens, all right? Read. Your ego, in various ways, will try to destroy that wisdom by saying, well, it doesn't apply in this case because... But your arguments against the Dandapati wisdom, your arguments are built on false understanding of virtue. But what my ex is doing is unjust. Yeah, but that person did not decide to evolve. And you already decide to have kids with that person. And to sign a mortgage that you have to pay together. So you have to be responsible of those choices. Okay? So it's that dynamic where you have to stop fighting and you have to start working in a constructive way, accepting the parameters that other people are also free to remain immature assholes in your life. Okay? If you're suffering, you're the one suffering. Takes a bit of humility there. Oh my God, I can't blame my ex for being such an asshole. Well, you'll suffer as long as you blame. You should stop. But he'll remain an asshole. Of course. Of course they will remain arrogant, aggressive thieves of your energy. Of course. Breathe. Trust evolution. Everything will get better as you get better. Are we good with the first word? We get the general idea, and then we spoke of the ways your mind could try to invent defenses. But all these defenses are about still blaming and projecting and not assuming your responsibility and accept, now I'm affected only by me. It's very hard to admit, okay? Adande Dandapati. Now, Danda in the traditional chant, in the inflected Romanized Sanskrit, Danda is a thing. It's not Dande, the verb. It's Danda, the object. Okay. So in the first line, Adande was the verb. Adande was actually the absence of the verb staff. Now it's the object staff, and it really is there. Dandapati. Pati means Lord, boss. Okay. Amsapati is like a boss, right? That's how we say it in Sanskrit. So Dandapati. Well, actually, Hamsa. I'm like a boss anyway. Dandapati is the Lord of the stick. That's literal. Feeling again. Feeling. What is to be a Lord? Now, if you imagine, okay, first, ancient Buddhists were invoking Samantabhadra. Adande Dandapati, they invoked the Lord of the stick. the one who has the staff of personal growth, okay? Or the power to punish me, okay? So without punishing me, the Lord of that staff, you know, He's coming, right? To help me move on the road. This is projection on the Bodhisattva, which is okay, right? But now you want to feel that you are the subject of that prayer. So you'll go, I'm the Lord of the stick. I'm a Lord. Boom. And then immediately you go into having the verb staff. If you imagine that the Lord is anything about your pride, your ego, your prestige, your authority, your power. Dandapati is you as the one in charge of your resources to grow, of your staff, to defend, to attack, to support, to help you walk. A staff is not just a weapon. It's a tool to progress on the on the road. Okay? So if Lord is you, you are a Lord, but you are a Lord only in the condition of adande, the first word of that prayer. So it's not the Lord who has authority and, hey, I'm the boss, so don't screw with me. You know, this imagining that you have this authority, this power. If you go back into the projection, I'm the Lord, you know, and the image that you have towards others, and what you imagine that they look at you from their point of view, you know, hey, I'm the boss, you should bow to me, you should respect me. Anything that is projected is not respecting adande, which was the first invoked principle. So what is a Lord when it has nothing to do with others? Let's say a guy is alone in a castle and he's got 1,000,000 acres of land and not a single living being lives there. He's a king of nothing. Huh? So is there any prestige when no one is there to admire you? When any decision you make is only about yourself? Okay? So if there's no verb stick or staff in adande, there's an absence of that kind of interaction outside. Okay? Later we'll learn it's all about your interaction with others. But first is to stop the interaction with others, to consider what is to be a Lord when there's only you to be your subject. There's no pride to gain. There's no fantasy to imagine that you're a great king or that you're shining. Because even if you're adorned with jewels and gold crown, no one gives a shit. It doesn't even bring you any attention. It's just you. So it's not that kind of Lord where your lordship is celebrated, your great pride and arrogance, and how pretentious you are to be the one with the big stick, you know. Like the male, I'm just Danadapati, you know. Got this humongous staff between my legs. Okay, so this kind of pride is not the real meaning of the Dandapati if you consider it's a dande. I'm alone with myself, vulnerable and affected, and I master that object, that tool. Okay? So Dandapati means to be responsible. It means that if you're the only one on that 1,000,000 acre of land, you're in charge of everything. I mean, you're the king, but you're gonna go and take care of the cows when they need to feed, and you're the janitor too. Okay? You have to clean up the dishes in your own kingdom of one. Okay? Does that make sense? Breathe. Please breathe. Contemplate the feeling. The mastery of self. And think in terms of Lord. You are a Lord. You're a divine incarnation. You just don't know about it. But it disengages the prestige about it. Later we'll realize that others are Lord, so a king to another king does not bow. They salute, you know, there's no supreme authority. Two great lords do not embellish one another. Oh, your crown is so loving, you know, you're better than me. No. There's If everyone is a lord, then there's still no more prestige about being a lord. So it's about your attitude. It's about being responsible. A king is someone in charge of taking decisions and making sure everything works fine in its kingdom. So you're the lord of your realm. You have the stick of power for your own experience. Okay. So Dandapati means autonomous. It means responsible. It means no one will do it for you. Let's give another metaphor that will be even more shocking. Dandapati means that you're not a victim anymore. There's no victim. You're in charge. So, Dandapati means there is no drama. Oh, we're pushing more. Oh, more definitions of Dandapati. Once it's affected by the adande attitude, the lord of your staff is no drama in any way and full responsibility. It nurses a desire to be in charge. Now, do you really want to be in charge, or do you still want someone else to do your dishes? I'm going to talk for myself. I really don't mind when someone else does my dishes. Okay? What does that mean? It means that emotionally, I'm talking physical. When I eat, I don't mind people doing my dishes. Seriously. That means that inside, emotionally, I have a place in my ego where I would enjoy someone else becoming aware so I don't have to do my work on myself. Because when you've realized this inside, full autonomy, you don't mind doing your dishes and using your own vacuum and doing your own stuff. You don't mind anymore. It's over. There's no more laziness about doing it. So you're lazy about doing your laundry? You're cleaning up? It means somewhere in your ego there's something that still wants mom to do it for you. That still wants dad to pay the bills. Breathe. So, we are born and we are unable, both in ability and competence, to pay our bills and clean up our dishes. We are unable. We can't. So we need. It's a need. Okay. We need a parents or someone else to do it. But we get accustomed to it because that's life. That's how it is until it changes and you become educated into having responsibilities. But since you were born, it was so much more comfortable to be in someone's arm, your head on breast. That's wonderful for everyone, not just men. Even as an adult, I love to have my head between two wonderful breasts. I understand the feeling. I would still want to spend my entire existence in that lazy, childish way. Because I'm a human being. So are you like that? Of course you're like that. You would like mom to go shopping with you and tell you how beautiful you are in that dress. I'm talking to girls now, by the way. Maybe not after your teens, and you imagine that period is over. But there's something inside that still would want to be in the first stage of life where you don't have to be powerful yourself. Okay, breathe. Find it. That part of you that doesn't want to take charge of your life is what makes your dishes smell. So Dandapati means that you have to admit you are immature. Oh, it was so fun when it seemed to be like, I'm the lord of the stick. Yeah, I can hurt you if I want, you know. Oh, that means I'm immature. That I'm responsible for my level of progress in life. Breathe. There are emotions that rise from those concepts, you know? Adande Dandapati. Just repeat it in your mind. Eyes open or closed, doesn't matter. It's not siddhi, now it's more contemplation. Adande Dandapati. Vulnerable, responsible of everything, and I'm in charge of discovering my immaturity, where I am at right now in my level of evolution. Alright. Dandavarte, let's go for the third line. Dandavarte, you see the word is Danda Avarta. Avarta means all around. Okay. And this is what I was just explaining. All around. Okay? Which means all-inclusive and self-contained. Spherical, if you want. Okay? It's a stick, but all around you. What does it mean? Dandavarte. So, Danda Avarta is a stick everywhere. Does it mean that we swing it? No. It means that it's not a localized stick. It's not in a specific place in your hand. It's everywhere around you. So, because it's not a stick here, it's the stick all around. How could it hold more than one position? Then it's not an object. Avarta becomes avarte. It becomes the verb or the event. That lordship is in every aspect. Dandavarte also means that there is no exception. We're good in our ego, huh? I want to do this, I want to do that. Oh, but in this case, there's an exception. It really is the other who's an asshole. Okay? So, when you try to find your way out, you sometimes try to find your way out of a situation. You lie to someone, they learn about it, and you try to invent a better story to justify yourself. And the more you dig your hole, the more you screw up. You know, when we were kids and teenagers, we did that. Huh? As adults, it's more rare, it happens. So, Dandavarte is to admit that there is no exception. Now, just with these 3 lines, the ego really doesn't like it. I mean, I am not defending myself. I'm responsible for everything I experience, with no exception, no way out. Wherever way out you go, it's still all around you. It's non-local. It's phenomena happening. So Dandavarte means, it means a stick everywhere as a verb. So in every event, it's just always happening. It's a constant. Okay, breathe. So what part of you wants a way out? What part of you still wants the dishes to be cleaned by someone else? And just breathe, okay? It's to take the time to sit in that state and discover by contemplating it. Adande Dandapati Dandavarte. Vulnerable, available, responsible, master with no exception of everything that goes on, and this work is mine to do and no one else's fault. That means no justification. Okay, Dandavarte just meant no justification. What is a justification? You know, when you explain yourself, it is very wise to explain yourself when it's based on prudence and justice. Okay, that line from Hesed to Hot, okay? That's very important. To have a good communication. When something happens, for everyone to understand what went on. That's prudence and justice. That's good to explain this is what happened. Okay? But you use this to justify yourself. It's not my fault because, you know, I'm sorry, but you took it as that way and this is not what I meant, which is a lie, because when you said it, you meant the insult, but now you see that the other's angry at you, you try to explain that it wasn't, and you're sorry, you just use bad words. Sometimes, you do that sometimes? Say something bad to someone, you're really angry, they're hurt, you realize too late that they're hurt, so you explain, oh, I'm just sorry, just a choice of bad word. What I meant was, that's justification. To be honest is, I'm sorry, I just realized I have unresolved anger inside. It's not about you, but it just came out as an insult, and I'm sorry. It really is my responsibility. I should not have done that. You know? That's prudence and justice. But justification is all those little explanations we give each other to prove to ourselves that we were right. Actually, we're all screwed. Okay? Justification. When you start with, it's not what I meant. Sometimes they misunderstood. Sometimes you're just trying to push another explanation that will pass because the first one didn't go through. Okay? So it's called manipulation. So when do you justify? Well, you can't necessarily have stories like that, but you understand what I mean, huh? Justification, explanation, why, you know. You don't understand. Sometimes you don't understand. Well, first it's a projection. You should say, well, I did not make myself understood, I guess. I should explain it differently. Okay? Because it's not the other's fault. But sometimes is you understand something that it's not a successful manipulation. Let me try another angle. Okay? That's what you could say. Okay? So you try again, you know. Hit with another step, you know, from another angle. And then these people look at you and, you're so full of bullshit. Oh my God! I'm even more liar. I need to find the perfect supreme justification for my third attempt, or else I'm really gonna be screwed. And you go at it again. There's no way out, because Danadapati. Okay? Find this feeling. Maybe not stories. Maybe if you have stories in your head, it's good. Use that. But if you don't have some of those events, but you know what I'm talking about because you've tried it a few times, like with the government, and if it was okay to not pay your taxes on that subject, and you know, whatever you try to find ways out. Find the feeling of justification. Find it. If you don't know if you're justifying yourself, or if you're correctly explaining yourself out of prudence, go and don't take a chance. Explain yourself. You'll realize if it's justification when you're digging your own grave. You'll see it. Okay? Don't take a chance to mess up something. Go with prudence and justice, but be available. Maybe you're full of bullshit and you just don't see it. Okay? It's okay. It will be a nice discovery of yourself when it is revealed. Okay? It's very hard to It's very hard to understand the teaching on justification because some people use it to shut up and then they never open up to anyone. You know, I don't have to explain myself to you. Well, the truth is you don't have to. But then don't complain that you're always alone and no one understands you. Okay? Can't dramatize. So it's to find that balance where you're as virtuous as you can with prudence and justice. And if you see yourself justifying yourself, well, have the humility after your second attempt. Oh, I'm sorry, I just realized I was just trying to justify myself. You're right. I just saw something inside. Usually the people that hear humble comments like that, they're so happy. Because now their pride is preserved. Oh, they admit it's their fault. And it's okay. They didn't choose to progress, it's good. But you just gain points in terms of honesty. You just gain people's trust by admitting what you want. Okay. So this week, when you prepare food, when you clean up the dishes, when you talk to each other during the 9 days, you will have opportunities to justify yourself or explain yourself and discover which one it was. Okay? You'll have the chance. We're having a 9-day study of the Dandapati, of course. Just taking 1 day to explain it and then we'll apply it. Am I justifying myself? Do I still need other people to acknowledge my good work? No. I'll be honest and say yes right away. I'm sure Peter agrees too. He did a lot of great work here, and he really did feel good when people acknowledge it, which is okay. And you should all say thank you to Peter for all the work he's done all here. And for Ole, for that superb round corner right there. That is piece by piece built. You know? Look at his pride. It was okay. He said, I need it. Well, no, you don't. You just justified yourself to believe that you need it. You don't. You appreciate it because your pride is stronger than your humility regarding that. Not that the wall. No, it's not about the wall. It's about Lot and Peter and the interaction with your two daughters. But we'll get to that later on. Okay? Then just tell me my wall is good, you know? Tell me my work is good. Okay, so I can still feel I'm providing from that freaking family, alright? Okay? Oh my God, we're digging. Okay, so you see, justification was right there. It's how deep you have to go. Thank you. I was waiting for Peter to say something. He shut up and says, thank you. I appreciate the comment. He was humble. So, okay, let's find someone else who'll be proud. Ole. And then, bam, yes, I need it. Okay, that was justification. He said, I need. That means that you're a victim. What about the Dandapati? You don't need gratification. You should be autonomous. However, you're not. Accept it. Oh, I lack autonomy. Now, you can receive compliments and feel good without the enslavement to compliments to feel good. And that's the big difference. If you get compliments, feel good about it. If you don't get compliments, remain functional and autonomous, you know? So this, I needed, that was justification. I justify that I'm still a victim and responsible. You're an advanced student. You're enlightened. You perceive those things easily. That's why I take you. I'm not going to take newbies here. I'm sure Irene would just go, oh my God, I'm not ascended yet. Oh my God. Take it easy, Irene. Okay? One thing at a time. Alright, you get it? You appreciate the angle? Okay?
Sure.
So it's wonderful to share your gratitude to people. I share my gratitude with the people here when I saw all the work they did. It's a wonderful temple, isn't it? Good. However, it was not required. It was beautiful. It's beautiful to share that love and appreciation, but it's not required. To be a lord is to be free of your subjects. And your subject is you. So, Dandapati is to be a lord of your own kingdom, free of yourself. Yet yourself as the lord of that free person. When you have a justification, you stop being a lord. You become the subject of your kingdom. Subject to the rules of the Lord, which is not you anymore. It becomes your conditioned ego. Then you're in a fascist system of your own mind. You have an usurpator. You don't have a good caring monarch. You have rules and needs and attachment and dependencies and weaknesses and fears. It takes work on yourself, takes time, takes explanation, and you are going to get a lot about these 3 first phrases of the Dandapati on the attitude to cultivate, to succeed efficient personal growth. So that a 1-hour integration becomes a 20-minute, then a 10, then a 1 minute, then a few breaths. This is what we want to achieve. Eventually, big dramatic heartbreak, instead of screwed for 3 weeks, you're screwed for 3 days, and then eventually you go for 3 hours, which is a pretty performant heartbreak. 3 hours and then freedom, you know. Are you okay with that? Breathe. Welcome to the boot camp.